These are universal thoughts. I'm not good enough. Another very common one when we don't get attunement as children or we don't get connection is I'm invisible. Or we have other beliefs like something terrible is going to happen. I can't do it. Here's a really scary one that a lot of us have and we're totally not aware of. I'm not going to do it. That's a very scary belief for us, especially with the persona beliefs, which is all about doing. But most of the time, that belief of I'm not going to do it is very strong within us, and it's so not allowed that we really push that out of awareness. Any of these thoughts resonate with you guys? I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too damaged, I'm too poor, I don't have enough education, I'm too
Yeah.
introverted, right?
Mhm.
All those beliefs. The world is a harsh, scary place. That's another one. I can't stop doing this. That's another very common one. That's about helplessness. It's too late for me. It's too late for me in this life. I'm going to be rejected. Or another one, I'm not important. Okay, so those are, I think Byron Katie has dozens upon dozens of those beliefs described. And I don't know, I probably have had all of those at some point. Certainly come into my consciousness. But those thoughts, they are introjections. I'm not important. You're not born with that belief, right? Yeah, it's dependent on how your needs are met as a child and the messaging you receive from the masculine and feminine energy that you're around. We introject those messages. And then what we do with inquiry is basically we're either attaching to these thoughts because they're not questioned, right? There's no one around. The problem with childhood is there's no one around to say often what you're learning about yourself here is deeply misguided and not true. So we interject it. And there is no questioning. And when there's no questioning, you can only do two things with these thoughts. You either question them or you attach to them. And that's what happens. And then they become beliefs. Now, not overnight, but they become beliefs over the next number of years. Because what happens then is if I interject that belief about myself, I'm going to, the belief then will be in my mind, and it's going to look out through my eyes into my life, and it will look for evidence to support itself. So a belief is like pretty much anything else. It wants to survive. So it's going to, and the way a belief survives is purely on evidence. Okay. So would you guys all agree that those beliefs that I described there are pretty unhelpful? We all have that, right? We have that in us and we know how it makes us feel. And we're like, why do I feel like this? I'd love to get rid of this. I'd love to let this go. I'd love to be able to detach from this. And I think we all agree with that. And inquiry, just pure inquiry, which is Byron Katie's process of, is it true? Do I know for sure it's true? Who would I be? Sorry, how do I react emotionally, behaviorally, and psychologically when I believe this? Who would I be without this thought? And then finally turning around and looking at the opposite thought of it, right? That's a way to let those thoughts go. But, and it's very effective. The problem is those are the thoughts that we want to get rid of. These all seem like mechanisms. There's a question here. One second, guys. Mechanisms of the ego. 100% Jersey. That's exactly what they are. And in addition to these shadow beliefs that I'm describing, right? What we're going to notice now in a minute is I'm going to describe the persona's response. Because the persona will have a response to this. And it's not to do inquiry. You can be sure of that, right? The persona and the shadow are the two aspects of the split self, the false self, right? And they work kind of together to maintain a sense of separation. But the trick of all this is that they present themselves as mortal enemies. So you think, well, these two parts don't really get along. This part thinks, well, I'm going to describe it right now. all those thoughts, those shadow thoughts I just described, okay? I'm not good enough. The world is a scary place, all those things. The persona will have a strategy to deal with those. It has something and it offers us this. So the solution, according to the persona, is, well, I'm not good enough. Anybody want to guess what the solution is for that? Persona will come up with a fix strategy.
Better.
Mm. Try to prove yourself, perfectionism.
Bingo. I need to fix myself. I need to get really busy doing it. I'm invisible. Persona comes up with a strategy. I need to be more extroverted, more introverted, more interesting. Something terrible is going to happen. Well, I need to prepare things perfectly. I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. Well, I need to get disciplined. I'm too old, etc., etc. I need to get surgery. I'm too I don't have enough education. I need to get a PhD. There's a solution. It's always going to put when the other one, the persona would have the world is a really harsh place. Well, you better stay away from it. I can't stop this. Well, you have to stop doing this. That's the solutions that we get from the persona, right? And this is the problem. The shadow, we're all in agreement about. We were trying to get rid of it. But with those persona thoughts that come up, the problem is we kind of see them as helpful. We trust those more than the shadow beliefs that we have, that we interjected a long time ago. And my idea is with dual inquiry is that the problem and the solution to the problem are the problem. And it's with that starting awareness that you can start to really make progress with this, because I have used inquiry in my personal life, right? And I have used it with many, many clients. But I've always noticed a really interesting thing that happens. And there's a bit of a snag I notice with some people. Just doing pure inquiry has been a revelation to me, right? But I've noticed a little issue with some people with it, and it's very understandable. When they start to question the shadow, something's wrong with me. I'll never amount to anything. There's a big resistance that comes up to questioning that. If you've ever tried to question that belief yourself, you'll notice that I just can't seem to make progress with this. There seems to be just this resistance to going all the way with this questioning here, or it doesn't seem to ring true for me, this questioning. It's because when you get down that halfway down that process of questioning the shadow, the persona is over here, and it is saying, you know what it's saying? Don't you dare go any further with that questioning. Don't you dare ask another question over there. Now that's strange, isn't it? Because they present themselves as mortal enemies. They don't get along with each other. But when you start questioning one of them, this one chimes in and says, no, that's enough of that. So this is an interesting thing. So my idea with dual inquiry, basically the idea of it is it's pretty much exactly like inquiry, except all you do is at the start of it, you identify the problem and the solution that you have to the problem. And then what you do is you get a piece of paper and you split it right down the middle. And you put down the problem on the left-hand side. And then you put down what is my solution on the right-hand side. And you start questioning either of those. Okay, you start questioning either one. And you'll notice, now which one should you start with? It doesn't really matter. Can I give an example? Yes. So an example might be, I'm not good enough. I'm not educated enough. I need to get a PhD. Okay. So I'm going to put down, okay, well, I'm not educated enough. I need to get a PhD. And what emotions will I feel? You see, this is really about emotions. And the criticism of inquiry sometimes is people say, Jersey, your question at the start was, what about emotions, right? And people have said about inquiry that, well, it's a lot focused on thinking. It's almost a cognitive approach. But really it isn't. Inquiry is almost a meditation into the body when we do it effectively. So what's the emotion I feel when I believe I'm not educated enough? I'm going to feel shame. I'm going to feel small. I'm going to feel hopeless, shadow. And then I'm going to look over here and say, well, you know what? I need to get a PhD. What am I going to feel with that belief? I'm going to feel overwhelmed. I'm going to feel anxiety, probably. Now, if you genuinely did have a sense of, yes, I really want to go and do that, that's awesome, and you feel a lightness in yourself, then you are already in the truth. Okay, there is something real. But if you feel that the persona response to this is go and get yourself super educated or hurry up and do more, or right, you're going to notice that there's an anxiety and a pressure and an overwhelmed sensation that you feel. So what we do with it then is basically just determine whether you feel more anxiety and pressure or you feel more dejected and hopeless. And depending on which emotion you have, that's where you would begin, right? So let's say with that example, I'm not educated enough and I feel shame and I feel unworthiness. Okay, that's where I'm feeling. I'm feeling depressed about it. I'm going to start with that. And I'm going to notice halfway down doing that inquiry, is it true? Can I be sure it's true? How do I react when I believe this? Emotionally, behaviorally, psychologically. Who would I be without it? Okay, and then turn it around to the opposite. I'm going to notice probably at a certain point down that inquiry process that I'm feeling resistance to it. That's because, David, you need a PhD is in the background. And it's saying, don't go any further with this. This is the solution over here. Why are you questioning this to begin with? So what you do is, if you notice the resistance gets too strong in the inquiry process, you just switch to the other belief. Now, that is a little bit unusual in inquiry because one of the things about inquiry is you take it at one belief at a time normally, and you don't switch between thoughts once you've started. But this is this is okay to do it this way because you're not switching from the belief we're working with is in the same context. We're not switching from this problem about being not educated enough to now talking about, well, actually, the problem is I'm not attractive enough. We're still within the same context of this problem. We're just allowing ourselves to go back and forth to look at how the persona and the shadow are dealing with this. Okay. So what you'll have then, so again, back to the original premise here is the solution, sorry, the problem and the solution to the problem are the problem. And once you question, you're going to question, I'm not educated enough. You're going to get to the truth of that. You're going to realize that's not true. I am educated enough. Now, maybe I don't have a PhD, but I'm educated enough to do whatever it is I need to do right now. And the idea that I need a PhD, well, that's not true either. I don't need a PhD. But what you're going to notice is whether or not you get the PhD or not is irrelevant. What you're working with is how you feel in that moment. What we're trying to liberate ourselves from is the pressure and the unworthiness, right? When we get rid of out of that shadow persona trap, back into ourselves, back into the heart. If you need to go and do a PhD, it's going to be super easy to go and do it. But don't do it with that intent of pressurizing yourself to that degree. It's not about, it's not about the practicalities of it. Where does the feeling of need come from? Aren't we whole just by being ourselves? Well, we do have needs. We don't need a PhD, probably, right? And we don't need a lot of the things we believe we need. We're told that we need a lot of money. We're told that we need status, admiration, all these different things. But there are certain things that we do genuinely need in life. Those are connection. That's the primary need that you're born with. You come with those needs hardwired into you, right? I have a bit of a problem with some spirituality nowadays because I think it kind of bypasses some of this stuff and it pretends like you can transcend your way out of having needs altogether. But we have a need for connection. We have an inherent need for freedom and autonomy inside us. That's not going away, right? We have a need for purpose. a purpose within the context of our own lives. We have that need. It's a very strong need we have. And we have a need for love, real love, to be appreciated, but in an honest way, in a real, genuine sense, not like a lot of us kind of get that in childhood, but it's a little bit syrupy and fake if we get it at all, right? But genuine appreciation is what we do really need. So the inquiry process is you doing the work with yourself or with somebody else, with the goal of not to pretend like I don't have needs at all, but to make it so that we can actually have the needs met, right? And we do have responsibility within ourselves. If we can do it within ourselves, for ourselves, to question this stuff we carry around, again, it's that stuff we introjected when we were younger. All those thoughts, I'm not good enough, I'm not important, I'm invisible, my ideas don't matter, I can't do what I want in life, the world is a scary place. We start doing the work on ourselves and we start removing a lot of that stuff. It actually makes love a lot easier to find in this life, right? Now, I'm not saying you have to be perfect because that's another issue too. People think, well, I need to work on myself and work on myself. And then I think if everyone had that idea, we'd be, the population would be in steeper decline maybe than it is. But I do think there's great value in doing this work. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by the problem and the solution to the problem are the problem. That's okay, Liz, no worries. Liz needs to go. So what I mean by this is an example I give is let's say let's use an absurd example. Let's say I believe something very strongly. I believe that the Easter Bunny is a serial killer and he's stalking me outside my house. And we obviously know that that's absurd, right? But if I believe that, what am I going to do? I'm going to get pieces of wood, timber, and I'm going to board up all the windows in my house. That's the solution I have to that problem. And that solution is going to make it so that I never look out that window and see what? No Easter Bunny. So the solution reinforces the original problem. And all of this stuff we put in ourselves, these solutions, and again, the telltale sign that it's coming from egoic consciousness is pressure, anxiety, overwhelm, right? If that's what you're feeling, that solution is not coming from the heart. It's not coming from higher consciousness. So these false solutions are a little bit trickier to let go of because very often in our lives we've been relying on them for a long, long time. And we've even had experiences in the past where they seem to work, right? Until we get to the point where we realize this is just about emotional liberation for us, right? We want to get to the point where we're able to let go of this anxiety, this pressure. And that's how your true self really does show up. But to make this more practical, it's going to be very difficult. Let's say you're feeling okay right now. It's tricky enough to do inquiry if you're feeling okay. It actually is. It's quite difficult to do inquiry, to go in to probe into those beliefs and try and isolate them and find out what they are. But this is why our triggers, and I made a video recently on triggers. Our triggers are the most useful thing in our lives in this sense. So look out for any trigger when it comes up, any emotional volatility, because what's happening is that that stuff from the bottom in the shadow is coming up to the surface. Those are the opportunities. So when you get really upset about something, that's when you got to use this inquiry. And if you can master inquiry and even do this method I'm talking about, where it's like, okay, there's going to be two issues. There's always, every problem is two problems. If you can start to do that technique when you need it and know how to do it when the need arises. I have a place to bring my triggers. When I get upset, I have a place to bring them. Because often, it's that strategy of, let's wait this out. Hopefully I'll feel better soon. Well, hopefully he'll apologize. Or, this, that, and the other will happen. But it leaves us too passive to it. And we don't actually get to the deeper truths of, why am I so angry right now? Okay, yeah, the person did something. But why am I reacting like this? This is really strong, this reaction. This is telling me something that I've believed, and it will bring you back to probably a belief about yourself that isn't true, ultimately. And I used to think I did inquiry many years ago, and I stopped doing it. And then, someone said to me, "Well, David, you should probably do some inquiry on that thing that you're dealing with there." And I was like, "Yeah, I did some inquiry. I know what that's about. But really, I didn't. I didn't really know what it was. I know what the questions were, but I didn't really understand it. Not really. It's when you do it and you keep doing it, when you're upset, that's when you realize, okay, there is liberation in this. It's a lot more than asking questions just up here. First of all, the body has to answer the questions. You have to let your body answer them. You have to let your body be ridiculous and childish and reactive and unreasonable, because that's how we feel when we're children. And but if you can do it and you can practice it a lot when you need it, that's the transformation on the other side of those triggers is incredible, right? And I've seen more. I think inquiry is actually more important than meditation, for instance, for most people. I'm not saying meditation, there's something wrong with it. I think it's a fantastic practice to meditate, but we do need to question a lot of this stuff that's holding this kind of false self-identity in place. And the shadow is all about the past, the persona is all about the future. And what it creates within us is this implied self that's called I or me that must be there in the middle. But have you ever noticed that when you're in the shadow persona, you're never actually present? You're always in the future or you're in the past. And there's an implication that there's somebody in there, but that's a character. It's an illusion of a self. It's not really who we are. And so I would say a few tips. Maybe I'll open it up to more questions in a moment if anyone has questions. So when you're doing this process, when you're upset, when you need this process, right? Slow down, take a space for yourself, try and get a place where you'll be alone, maybe if you can, or do it with somebody else. If you've got a friend or a partner you can do this with, or a therapist even, it's a fantastic thing to do. But you slow right down and let your body answer the questions. So the first question, is this true? And people who start to do inquiry for the first time, okay, uh, I am I am so ridiculous. I'm so stupid. Whatever the shadow belief is, something's wrong with me. Is it true? And people at the start will often say, well, no, it's not true. I suppose it's not true. But the body isn't answering that question like that. The body is upset. And the body is saying, yeah, it is true. The first question is almost always yes, the answer to the first question. And the second question, am I absolutely sure that this is true? That one is more to see if there's any little bit of light getting in at all at the beginning. Right? So you might be 99% sure, which is good because it means you're not 100% sure. But sometimes the second question is, am I absolutely sure that this is true about myself in this situation? Sometimes the answer is yes, and that's fine too. What you need at that point then is what the next two questions an inquirer are designed to do is to get you motivated enough to question it. Because this belief of something's wrong with me, I'm not good enough, why do we have it? Okay, we introjected it, but why does it hang around? Why are we still attached to it? We believe, or it believes, you could even say, that it's helping you. It thinks it's preparing you for the day when somebody else says that to you. At least if you do it to yourself, you'll be more prepared to handle external attacks or criticism. So we do actually put stock in it. We kind of hold value in it to that degree until you realize with the inquiry process, which is, well, what happens to me exactly when I believe this? Well, my emotional life is complete volatility. My behavior falls apart. I can't get out of bed, or I can't work, or I can't function. I can't exercise. I isolate myself. What images do I see? Well, I'm in the past. I'm thinking about that silly thing I said 3 days ago, or that overreaction I had, or whatever it is. But it's the thing about the images that you're seeing is it's a very selective version of your life. It's only going to show you things that confirm something is wrong with you. It's going to highly edit your life to pick out anything that will confirm that belief. So, and then you will look at, well, look, the next question is, who would I be if I could put this belief down? And that's going to show you, well, if you can really you got to get so still with that question. And I actually think it's helpful to say to yourself with that question, don't put any pressure on myself to feel anything here. Almost take that as a hypothetical question. Imagine if I could stop believing this. And think about that for yourselves right now. If you have a belief, something's wrong with me, I'm not good enough, don't try and drop it. Too much pressure. Try and say, imagine I could. Imagine there's like an off switch where I could stop believing that. What would that be like? I wonder. Just hypothetically, even. And I think you get a glimpse, maybe, into what it would be like. Now you see you're looking at my life without the thought, my life with the thought, truth is actually choiceless. It's a no-brainer. I would prefer to let this go. I'd love to let it go. It actually doesn't have any utility, even though I've been thinking it's helpful. Now you're actually at the point where you're hoping it's not true. You're really hoping because you've laid it out there as, okay, this is obvious here at this point. This belief is not helping me. I would question if it even helps you for a nanosecond in your whole life. And now you're like, okay, well, let's look at the direct opposite of this. There's nothing wrong with me. And now you'll sit with that, and maybe nothing comes immediately. But if you allow yourself to sit with it long enough, you see, the problem is the nervous system, ego, is looking in this direction all day long. There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me. And what we're trying to get it to do is say, look, just slow down. Look here for just a minute. Just slow down. And you're going to start to find evidence. There is nothing wrong with me. And it can be small evidence at first, right? Did I rob a bank this week? No. Now, it starts off small. Does that prove that there's nothing wrong with you? No. But is it a suggestion, a small movement in that direction? It is. And we keep going with that until you can get kind of 3 pieces of evidence that suggest that you actually do resonate with you internally. That's what you want to find. And you can find that in stillness when you're not preoccupied with this, right? You're giving yourself permission to explore this alternative that you haven't been allowed to look at. And the same process then with the persona, right? I need to work harder. I need to hurry up. I should have done this already. I have to do it. I have to do this. I have to do it. That's a big one in the persona. And of course, the problem with that is it blinds you to the fact that many things in life you actually want to do, but you're not even aware that you want to do them because of that belief system or that imperative saying that you have to do it, you have to do it, you have to do it, intervenes. It actually blocks you from it. And the beauty of inquiry is I see so many people, and they're living fantastic lives. They're living amazing lives, but they can't see it because it's this stuff in their head, these interjections about who they think they are and their identity that blind them. They can't see it. So like a person, they started a new job, they have all sorts of things going on in their life, but the mind is going to find grievances with the self because it's always looking for problems. That's all it does. Right? It's going to try and find solution or problems that reinforce this idea, the primary interjection we had, that is surrounded by guilt and shame, usually, for most of us. So, just to recap, Sally says, isn't that the same as finding a solution to challenging negative beliefs to looking for positives? It is, but the only thing, Sally, I would say about that is this isn't the same thing as positive thinking. I don't even think that's what you were saying necessarily, but what we do, the process of inquiry involves looking first at the negativity and the emotional reaction, okay? The trigger. The potential problem with positive thinking is that I am upset, I am triggered, and I'm going to lean into positive thinking or solution-based thinking before I've dealt with all this. Right? So in that sense, positive thinking can potentially become a way to repress emotions and really deeper questions that would be helpful for us. I'm not saying there's necessarily always something wrong with positive thinking, but I think back in the 70s when the positive thinking movement kind of started, I think a lot of people did run into problems with kind of having this cognitive dissonance within themselves when there was this inner trauma that they were dealing with. feelings of guilt and shame, and they were trying to do affirmations and telling themselves all these different positive things, and it created this cognitive dissonance inside themselves. So you can get to the truth, which is loving, which is positive and hopeful and proactive and everything else. But we must first look at the error that we interjected to get to the truth on the other side of it. Right? So I'm not sure, Sally, if that doesn't answer that question, let me know. But I would say one thing though on that also. Let's say you do this inquiry on yourself and you genuinely question there's something wrong with me, as an example, and you find out there's actually nothing wrong with me. In fact, there's something right with me. There's a lot right with me in my life. And you've looked at the trigger here to get to that realization. And you've done the work, you've felt the emotions, you've done the inquiry. Once you have found that truth, what I would say, Sally, and everybody else, is don't lose contact with that. You've earned that positivity now, right? That's a different way of saying, let me grab for something that sounds more positive and let me just focus on that all the time, instead of transforming the negative into the positive and then retaining that positivity as mine. Does that make sense? Right? You can certainly focus. Focus is a very important thing. But I would say that I almost put it in terms of you earn your positive thinking by looking at what isn't positive initially. Right? Children don't really do positive thinking. What children are looking for, children are, and you probably know this, they're brutally honest, right? That's what they're looking at. They're looking for the truth. And that's what we're looking for. That's what we're all looking for. We're not looking for positive thinking. The trick is, though, the crazy thing, the beautiful thing about it all is that the truth is loving. It's so loving. You let go with all this pressure on yourself. I need to be this. I need to do that. Take a deep breath. I don't need to do any of that. I don't need to. I can do things. I'll probably do a lot of things, but I don't need to do any of that. And it's not going to get me what I think it's going to get me. The PhD, the new relationship. They're beautiful things, maybe, potentially. But if I do it for the wrong reasons, aka to get love, to feel better about myself, to get rid of shame, well, at the very least, we'll be sorely disappointed by the outcome. Because that stuff can only come from you. That comes from in here. Because you're born with that. That's your birthright. So we do that questioning. And the beautiful thing is you get more peace of mind. And with peace of mind, you tend to be more creative. You tend to want to go and do things and express yourself and create things and build your life and create connections with people. Or be more authentic. Certainly be more in line with the truth of things. So the truth, people say the truth hurts. The truth doesn't actually hurt. It's hidden lies hurt. Hidden lies that we block out because we don't want to deal with them. They hurt. And the truth does set you free, ultimately. And what is the truth we're talking about here? Love. Love. Connection. Not seeing separation everywhere we go. Not having separation within our own split mind. Shadow persona all the time. And this warring mind. So the goal here is peace of mind. And then once we have that in place, we start to emphasize that more as a value for ourselves. Action comes. Action comes.